cell phone. Yeah, there we go.
That's what I told them. Baltimore City Council Budget and Appropriations Committee back in session. Ms. Talley, please start. Oh no, I know who you are, and I saw you. I'm sorry, I was looking for my colleagues. We're going to ask you to run through your presentation. Keep it to 7 or 8 minutes. If it goes past that, I'm going to respectfully cut you off. Also, during this session, City Schools is doing a moment of silence today for the 9 students who lost their lives to violence this year. We will be joining them because we can't be there at North Avenue or any of the schools in our district. So we're going to honor those students with a moment of silence ourselves. So I'm going to likely cut you guys off at about 9:57 or 9:58 on the dot. You can mark that. I'm going to be punctual. And we'll do that, and then we'll reconvene a few minutes later, and then continue our session until 10:30 a.m. So with that, Ms. Talley, and before you begin, I'll do very quick introductions. Council members, Leon Pinkett, 7th, Shannon Sneed, 13th, Brandon Scott, 2nd, Vice President Sharon Green Middleton, 6th, and Robert Stokes, 12th. If you could introduce your senior staff with you and then get started, please.
You'd like me to introduce them?
Please, everyone.
Actually, I'll let them introduce themselves.
Stand up or raise your hand. Or you don't have to stand, raise your hand, that's good.
Mr. Chair, they don't have, all of them don't have mics.
Okay, if you could introduce them, Ms. Talley, just say who they are and what they do.
I'm sorry?
Say their name and
Okay.
their position, please.
Jasiah Smith, she's the Deputy Director of HR Operations. LaTanya Bryant, sitting next to her, she's the Deputy Director of HR Administration. Ray Gouliard, the Chief of Employee Benefits. Elisa Underwood is the Chief of Classification and Compensation. Sandy Curtis is the Chief of Learning and Development. Margot Bruner is the Chief of the Employee Assistance Program. And Tanya Brinkley is the Chief of Human Resources Information Systems.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, members of the council. So DHR Administration, has responsibility for designing and developing the HR infrastructure, not only for central DHR, but across city agencies. This service is also responsible for developing and implementing programs, initiatives, and strategies that support the mayor's overall goals and objectives. We're also responsible for DHR budget preparation. We have procurement functions. We're responsible for policy development, which includes policy creation, as well as compliance initiatives, which includes ensuring that all of the agencies are meeting the federal, state, and regulatory requirements. Major budget items, the recommended funding will remain at its current service level. DHR Benefits Administration. This service is responsible for administering the city's health and welfare plans. This division provides centralized management for self-insured medical plans, a prescription drug plan, Medicare Part D benefits, a dental HMO and PPO, vision plan, basic and optional life insurance programs. We also have 2 flexible spending accounts, and we also administer unemployment insurance, as well as the employee assistance program. So our major budget items are the wellness program. We've added 2 new positions to the wellness program. One is a wellness coordinator, and the other is a nutritionist. For fiscal year 19, we plan to place greater emphasis on cost containment strategies, which include utilization reviews, case management, disease management, wellness, and preventive care, just to name a few. Our next item is civil service management. Civil service management includes 3 separate divisions. It includes classification and compensation, recruitment and talent acquisition, and the Civil Service Commission. Classification and Compensation Division is responsible for creating positions, auditing positions, also responsible for job analysis and classification and compensation studies, and the city's overall compensation structure. We also collaborate with the ECC, and we submit our proposed actions to the ECC and the Board of Estimates. This service is also responsible for civil service recruitment, which includes attracting, hiring, and retaining talent, as well as tests, administering test assessments to include public safety, which is fire and police. Our major budget items for fiscal year 19 is that we transferred two senior assessment and analysts from the Department of Finance to the Classification and Compensation Division because it was desperately understaffed. In addition to that, DHR has adjusted its methodology for time to fill. Previously, included in our time to fill numbers were functions that the agencies were responsible for. However, we struck those functions from our time to fill, and we're only focusing on those which the Department of Human Resources is directly responsible for. For recruitment and talent acquisition, we reclassified two of our existing positions, two senior recruiter positions, to assist the city in attracting and retaining qualified professional, managerial, and executive level positions, as well as hard-to-fill roles. Our next service is CoB University, or which we also call Learning and Development. CoB University is responsible for the learning and development opportunities across city agencies, primarily focusing on soft skills. It also includes the new employee orientation program, as well as the supervisory leadership program. We also provide customer service training, effective communication and diversity training, as well as other skills training. The training division collaborates on compliance training in partnership with DHR policy. Primarily, the compliance training is administered by our policy and compliance division. However, they have input from our training division as well. So our learning and development model is currently, and has been for the past several years, a self-sufficiency training model, and therefore, it is compelled to charge city agencies for training services including compliance training. Our recommendation for this service is that the funding will maintain at its current level. That concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?
Thank you. We've been joined by Council President Jack Young and Councilman Yichi Schleifer from the 5th District, Councilwoman Sneed. You're up first. You're up, Shane.
Thank you, Chairman. You mentioned hard-to-fill roles or positions, so I'm wondering what those positions are. In your presentation, you said focusing on hard-to-fill.
Councilwoman in the mic. Or we're having.
You mentioned hard-to-fill roles and hard-to-fill positions in your presentation, so I'm just curious what those positions are.
Some of the hard-to-fill positions? For example, there are several positions in the finance which have been hard to fill, primarily in the procurement area, so we've been assisting with that. We're also assisting with BSIT, fill some of their positions because they're doing a major restructuring, so we're actively involved in that as well. And we're also actively involved in assisting the Mayor's Office of Human Services fill some of their positions.
Is every position throughout the city agency, does every position have to be posted online? Is that a requirement?
All civil service positions have to be posted online, but non-civil service positions, there's no requirement that they are posted online. Typically, however, we do post them.
Okay. And so, I guess those were my two. I'll come back. I'll let my colleagues go.
Mr. President.
I just want to dovetail on the Councilwoman's question, Mr. Chair, so that don't count as my two. If these positions are hard to fill, and we have the Mayor's Office of Employment Development, how come we have not looked at a training program for those positions that are hard to fill? Now, I know procurement is not hard to fill, because I know lots of people that have tried to get into that procurement department, but for some reason, they cannot get in there. and they working for the University of Baltimore, University of Maryland, have tons of experience and can't get in there. So I don't buy that there's no talent with that, because I know that's untrue. So I think we should put together some type of program to, if we know that these jobs are hard to fill, some kind of training program or some kind of on-the-job training, if not a training program itself, so that these folk can be qualified for these positions. Because we need to get people to work, especially those who live, sleep, and play in Baltimore City.
Well, for example, the finance positions, procurement specifically, they are difficult to fill because they have special credentialing requirements. They require specific certifications that many applicants that have applied for the positions do not have.
I beg to differ. I beg to differ, because their standards are no greater than the University of Maryland, who is running over $1 billion agency, the University of Maryland, Johns Hopkins, and all those places. I can't see, with all the deficiencies that this city has, that we can't, that their jobs are so specialized that we can't get nobody to fill them. I just don't buy that, you know, because I know lots of people who's in procurement and have submitted resumes that I've personally given to finance, and nothing happened.
Please understand, Council President Young, that the minimum requirements and the specifications for positions are determined by the agencies. They determine what they need.
I understand that.
Okay.
I understand that. I'm just saying that I don't buy that piece that they can't find nobody, because there's tons of people. So we'll deal with the agencies themselves, because we ask each agency to have a training program. Councilwoman Middleton talks about it all the time, about apprenticeships. I mean, we need to, if finance can't find nobody with those credentials, then they need to have an apprenticeship program where they can work these folk and learn the process, and then go after the certification and get these jobs. I'm done with that. But anyway, those jobs is hard to find. Can you get a list of those jobs to the budget committee so that we can peruse them and figure out, you know, how we can get some kind of training program in place?
Sure.
I don't have much for your agency other than to ask you to tell me about, you know, HR consolidating all of the HRs, because if they're not consolidating the police department HR, then we're going to be opposed to that.
We are moving towards centralization. However, our approach is to, thank you, our approach is to acquire one agency at a time.
Start with the police department. Start there first. Start with the police department first.
I will pass that
Because if you
information
get the
along.
police department, then you're going to have no problem out of none of these council members to, as you consolidate. But the police department always push back, and y'all let them do it. So I'm going to encourage every department agency, if the police department do not come into the fold, then we're going to put a bill in to stop centralizing. I already mentioned it to the mayor.
Okay, understood.
Good, Mr. President?
I'm done.
Yes, sir.
Can I piggyback off him? I'm
Please.
just curious, how do you qualify who goes first and who goes second when qualifying what agencies should fall into the fold?
Well, it's not exclusively DHR's decision. The mayor's office is involved in that decision. However, some of the criteria include policy and compliance issues or initiatives that we want to implement. We take a look at problem areas that we believe contribute to turnover, as well as auditing problems, and those are the agencies that we're focusing on immediately.
Ms. Talley,
Yes.
I would appreciate, since this is on Charm TV, I'm going to reference this YouTube clip at a later date, if you could please explain, say your name, your position title, and explain how elected officials are paid. Because there's a common misconception that we vote for raises for ourselves. So I would like for you, as the Chief Human Capital Officer for the City of Baltimore, I'm dead serious, to state your name, state your position, and explain how that works. And please keep that in a 1 to 1.5 minute explanation, please.
Oh, excuse me, Mr. Chair. And as you do that, also explain how some folk get anywhere from 10 grand to $90,000 and the increase. We saw that in the budget, but they squawk when we get the raise that we get.
If you could do that in 2 parts, and please address the council presidents first. Thank you.
So my name is Mary Talley. I'm the Director and Chief Human Capital Officer for the City of Baltimore. How salaries are determined for executives, is that your question, or officials?
Yeah, let's start with that. And then
Okay. So typically those positions are classified as MAPS positions. That means that they are at will. And each position is determined, the salary for each position is determined by its classification. The classification depends on the nature, scope, scale, duties, and responsibilities of that particular position. From that, it is assigned a salary grade. All of the grades currently are established. So we look at the qualifications for the position, the job specifications, the duties and responsibilities. It gets assigned a grade. That grade determines the salary range for the position. All of the MAPS covered positions have a salary range from a minimum amount to a midpoint to a maximum amount. But also understand that with the MAPS positions, there's something called a MAPS salary policy, and that policy also has various provisions for pay increases, which includes pay for performance, as well as several other provisions, such as which includes competitive salary offers. It may also include additional responsibilities, a permanent change in job duties, and to align salaries with other members in that same class within the agency or across the city. So those salaries are primarily determined, or where a person falls within that range is based on their experience, their professional work experience, their credentials to include their graduate degrees, their postgraduate degrees, their undergraduate degrees, as well as their certifications.
Thank you. Now can you address the elected officials piece?
I'm sorry?
Or she did the executive piece?
No.
The executive piece, we're good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Now can you state your,
I'm not good. I'm not good, because I want to know how someone can get $90,000. That's my concern.
I didn't really
I-
get any.
I don't understand your question.
President's referring to, there was an increase in the salary for the director of BCIT, the CIO,
$90,000.
and it was a $90,000 increase. That's what the president's question is in reference to.
Because I see all this on the Board of Estimates, and I try not to question that stuff. But when I see that large of an increase, it's a problem.
Do you have an answer?
Well, I will say that, again, it depends on the person's qualifications, their prior experience, and the overall relative worth of that position to the organization as determined by the administration.
Councilman Pinkett?
So to follow up on that, when, whether it be the administration or agency expresses a desire to raise the salary for a particular position, what is the process that HR goes through? Is there a salary review? I mean, is there a an analysis that happens on that position, both regionally and nationally, to make a determination? Or does the administration and agencies, do they have liberty to not only propose, these salary increases, but then also authorize them unilaterally? Or what role does HR play in this?
There is something in the MAP salary policy called exceptions, and that means that anything that is above a midpoint range constitutes an exception. It is supposed to come to the Department of Human Resources. Yes, we do evaluate it, and we review it, and we make a determination.
We don't have any problems with that. We have a problem with these large, I mean, you know, we can't do that. We're the legislative branch. So we don't have the power to do that. Create positions and pay them what we want to pay them.
Can I ask, so how many are denied then? If you have agency folks who say, directors coming in and say, hey, I want this person to make X amount of dollars, and it has to come to your office, how many times are you saying no?
It happens quite often because we look at not only what that person brings to the table, but we also look at the current incumbents. We look at what those salaries are for those individuals because we try to avoid creating pay inequities in an agency and across the city in general. So we take that process very seriously. So we do make, we
But
do
how
decline
many,
quite
like,
often.
with the new administration, we have new people coming in. Some people have left, gone different places, and then we've getting an influx of new people. And so with a lot of the agency heads, these are their people, nothing is wrong with that. And so they're saying, I want this guy to make X amount of dollars. How many times is this in front of you? How many through the years that we've been in? We've only been in a year and a half. How long, how many has come to your desk to say, 10 applications and you've approved all 10. I mean, I guess I'm looking for those numbers. And if you don't have them, I guess you can submit it to the budget committee. I'm just curious because I would like an accurate number.
So you want to know how many exceptions have come to our attention
How
within
many-
the last 18 months?
How many have come to your desk and how many have you approved or denied?
I understand. Elisa, can you address that question?
We don't have that data at this time, but I can get that for you and submit it to the Budget Committee.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilwoman, can you repeat the request? This is number 28.
For number 28, I just want to know how many through our year and a half that we've been in with this new administration, how many new applications have come to say, hey, I want my guy to make X amount of dollars. So how many times has that come in? And how many have we denied or accepted?
It's my water.
Okay. All right. Can we go back to my question about elected officials? If you could start over. Name your position, that thing you did about being the human capital officer for the city. That was perfect. And if you could explain how elected officials are compensated. Also, please include the history behind that, like when the commission was created and the fact that what triggers the raise for all of that. You know all this stuff. So
Yeah, well,
did you
and
understand what I want to use this for, right?
Sure.
I want to be able to send people, when people ask about this, I want to be able to say, no, that's incorrect, because you're the expert on this in the city, we're not. I want to say, here's the expert on this in the city explaining it for you so that people can understand. That's what I want to do.
You want me to restate my name?
Yes, and your title, please.
My name is Mary Talley. I'm the Director and Chief Human Capital Officer for the City of Baltimore. Salaries for elected officials are not determined by the Department of Human Resources. As I understand it, they are determined by, at one time it was a compensation committee. I have never met anyone on that committee. I don't even believe that it's active. But I believe that their salaries are also described, the methodology for their salaries is described in the charter.
Maybe we need the labor commissioner to help us out here.
That's who we need to answer that? Okay, that's fine.
Because it's tied to.
That's not helpful. But yeah, I know. Councilman Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Director Talley, thanks for being here. Two quick questions for you. One, actually, it's a follow-up request that the council didn't get from you guys that we were supposed to get during the hearing for Councilwoman Snead's residency bill. We were talking specifically about police command positions, and although we know that we can't make them live here because they're a state agency, which again, for the record, is stupid, but we were also talking about how those positions, because they are maps and at will, in this particular rule that you mentioned, that does not allow whoever the police commissioner is, for example, say if I wanted to fire Councilwoman Clark and she was a major of a district, right? That position is at will, but there's some HR rule that says that she can't be fired. She can only be demoted to lieutenant. You said that you guys were going to give that to us, but we never got it. It's on video, so I can bring it back up if you guys need that.
I'm still a major.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the police command staff positions?
Yes, ma'am.
They are at-will positions.
So we had this discussion before. The positions themselves are at will.
Yes.
But somewhere, and you guys, you said that you were going to determine for us whether that was in state law or in city HR policy, that the position, you're right, you're correct, we're both correct, that the position itself is a at-will position. But the person is not allowed to be fired. They have to be demoted to lieutenant. So this, that you can shake your head, but I'm telling you that this is true because we had the police commissioner in here and we asked him why people weren't fired and they were only demoted, and he said that they can't fire them. They can only demote them to the rank of lieutenant.
That's because of what is it?
Mary. You want me to take it?
Hi, ma'am. How are you?
Hello, Caroline Sturgis, Deputy Budget Director in the Finance Department. So the law that you're referring to, that's a state law underneath the LIBOR. So those are for police sworn command positions. You also have police civilian command positions, which are at will. Of course, the commissioner can make the appointment as well as terminate those. However, for your police sworn command positions, they are guided by the state LIBOR law. I'm trying to recall the actual full
clause.
name of it.
And
LIBOR stands for the Law Enforcement Officers
No,
Bill
yeah,
of Rights.
yes, ma'am. We know what it is. Ms. Sturgis,
Yes, sir.
just to follow up on that point. So, because I believe you're right. So, the issue is, though, as you know, Commissioner Tuggle could appoint a civilian to be a district commander because it's not a requirement for that person to be a sworn police officer. And if he appoints a civilian to that position as district commander and that person doesn't do their job well, they can be fired outright. But if he just so happens to promote a lieutenant to the position of district commander and that person also doesn't do their job right, that person can only be demoted back to lieutenant. Is that the way that we interpret the ruling of the law?
Correct. Right.
Thank you, ma'am.
There's a process that they would have
Yeah,
to go through
that
for
would
the
go through.
termination for a police.
Thank you. It really, that's for the benefit of my colleagues for another example of ridiculousness because whoever the police commissioner is, hands are tied again because people can be ineffective, they can steal money from the police department and only be demoted to lieutenant. That is something that we have to change. Ms. Talley, question for you.
Councilman, can we pause now because it's 10 o'clock?
Oh yes, please, let's pause.
Thank you. Actually, we're at 9:58, so, or if you're going to be quick.
Yeah, it's a very quick yes or no question. Ms. Talley, you mentioned inequity earlier. Is there anyone that works for you on staff on HR whose sole job is to look at your job as the HR department for the city through a lens of equity and make sure that every agency's HR policies are done through a lens of equity?
The Classification and Compensation Division is responsible for reviewing salaries across the city, which also encompasses the salary studies, if you will.
That sounds like a no.
Yeah.
But
We can just pause for a second.
so, so today, Baltimore City Public Schools is holding a moment of silence for the 9 city school students who lost their lives this year to acts of violence. I'd like to start by reading a statement from Dr. Sonia Santelices, who is CEO of the school system. In the current school year, 9 city school students lost their lives in acts of violence on the streets of our city. There are no words to describe our sadness in the face of such tragedy, and no limit to the sense of outrage we feel when we contemplate what we have lost. 9 young lives filled with potential and possibility, capable of achievements that now will never be realized and promise that will now go unfulfilled. Young lives cut short, families shattered, and dreams destroyed. I pray for peace in which our children can thrive, but I know that peace is not possible without justice, and that justice will not come until all of Baltimore's children become our children. And we take responsibility as a society for ensuring that our young people have the opportunity to realize their full potential and make their dreams a reality. Let us commit ourselves this morning to peace and to justice in memory of the students we have lost and in our determination that we must lose no more. All of our young people carry within themselves the potential to change our future for the better, and we must ensure that they have the opportunity to become everything they are meant to be. That concludes Dr. Santelisa's statement. Council President Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I stand with my colleagues on the City Council and with the Baltimore City Public Schools CEO and Mayor Pugh in committing ourselves to fighting for justice for the young lives lost in Baltimore City. We also stand for the creation of the environment our children deserve, an environment where they are able to thrive and reach their full potential. No young life should ever be deprived of the opportunity to become everything they are meant to be.
Vice Chairman Pinkett.
As has been stated, during the current school year, 9 students lost their lives to the violence that has become all too pervasive in our streets, a violence that continues to consume far too many of our citizens, especially our youngest. These young people are 9 students who won't have the opportunity to graduate, 9 students who won't have the opportunity to go to college or explore professional pursuits, 9 students who won't get to start a family or achieve their goals and aspirations. Today we reflect on and remember these lost lives with a moment of silence, but if we are to really honor their memory, tomorrow we must rise with a concerted cry that enough is enough. Rashad Parks, Excel Academy; Tyrese Davis, Calverton Elementary Middle; Thomas Johnson, Reginald F. Lewis High School; Jeffrey Quick, Bluford Drew Jemison STEM Academy; Stefan Cook, Excel Academy; Andre Galloway, Frederick Douglass High School; John Brown, Excel Academy; Ray Glasgow Jr., Baltimore City College; Jordan DeShields, New Era Academy.
Please join us in a minute of silence for those who lost their lives this year. Thank you, Council President and Councilman Pinkett, and thank you to Dr. Santelisa for allowing us to be a part of that, even though we couldn't be there today. Ms. Talley, please continue.
Mr. Chair.
Councilman.
Thank you. Ms. Talley, let me try to make this question a little simpler. I understand you have the folks that are analyzing the salaries, and I think that's greatly appreciated, but what I'm asking is a little bit deeper than that. The simply yes or no, is someone dedicated to making sure that all the city's HR policies are done through a lens of equity, not just the income gap, but racial, gender, all of those kind of things as well?
So in addition to the Classification and Compensation Division, we have a Policy and Compliance Division that is responsible for primarily the policies that deal with human capital and human capital management, and that is currently the 200 series in the AM manual. So we have a policy review process where we systematically go through every single policy, and we're in that process right now. We select those policies that are most impactful to the agencies, And we review them, we make recommendations for correction or changes, or that things be struck, or in some cases that the policy be eliminated. And we provide those recommendations and we submit those to the board for approval. However, preceding that process, we also have several people involved in that policy review process. And that includes representatives from the City Council's office, the Comptroller's office, the Mayor's office, as well as the Police Department, Fire Department, trying to remember the others.
General Service.
The Office of the Labor Commissioner, how could I forget you? The Office of the Labor Commissioner. So there is a wide variety of perspectives and inputs in how those policies are shaped.
Ms. Talley, so it's early in the morning. I'm really not interested in hyperbole. That's a yes or no question, because basically this seems to be a long way to saying no, that you guys don't. Is there a staff person whose title is equity specialist? Yes or no?
I'll help you, Councilman. No.
Thank you.
I mean,
No,
can
we
you
do
just
not have an
answer
equity
the
specialist.
question directly?
She said no.
All right. Councilman, you good? I'm good. Councilwoman Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning.
Good morning.
First question, the DHR Benefits Administration, you talk about 2 wellness positions. Could you explain what's a wellness person do?
The wellness coordinator it has a variety of functions within the benefits division. However, their primary focus is on tobacco cessation for the city's tobacco cessation program, as well as assisting the wellness manager in developing, designing, and implementing wellness programs, which may include programs about seminars and workshops on improving your eating habits. It may improve exercise programs, which the city has a robust number of those programs. And it may also include other containment strategies to improve the overall wellness of the city's population.
How many Baltimore City retirees do we have per year, estimate?
How many retirees do we have per year?
Yeah, how many Baltimore City employees retire per year, around a ballpark figure?
I don't have that number readily available, but I can get it for you.
Okay, the reason why I mentioned that, a couple reasons. One, you know, in Baltimore City, we're in sort of a crisis, especially in a number of our impoverished communities. And I know personally and represent a number of Baltimore City employees retiring that are on fixed incomes, and they're in neighborhoods where the life expectancy is, you know, very low. In other words, they pass away soon after, somewhere between the ages of 65 and 70. And I think that this wellness coordinator should partner with the Aging Office and the Aging Commission, and we need to keep a data collection of, you know, it's like a beginning of keeping data of the people that have worked tirelessly 30 or more years. And remember, these are people that also are raising their grandchildren, and, you know, there's a whole lot of other needs. And I think it's our responsibility as a government to, you know, if we keep track of that data, we can figure out other ways to help in wellness. So please consider including that. I think it's something that we owe to, you know, again, the people that work hard for us. We need to keep track. We need to make sure that they are included in new benefits. There's a lot of these people don't have access to computer because they're on that very low fixed income of $25,000 a year, which is, ridiculous. A lot of them are still working second jobs, so I think that needs to be another assignment to show that, we care about the people that have put in a lot of time, and it'll be a trickling effect for the people that they take care of. And I'm specifically talking about neighborhoods that are impoverished. I have a, section in Park. All of us on the council have sections in our neighborhoods where government employees have put in time, and then they're just lost when they leave. Amen. So please consider keeping data and also connecting with in the health department with the Department of Aging and the Aging Commission. The Aging Commission is taking a new look at things. There's new people on that board, and this is just very important to the city overall and to the government. The next thing is what steps have been taken to secure employee records so we don't have breaches like we've had in that big one we had in the past that I was a part of.
I answered it for you. That's B said.
I'm thinking about that. So I'm sure everybody in this room knows that there have been a lot of data breaches across this nation. However, we do try our best, particularly with from the HR side, for our records to be confidential and only accessed by people that have a legitimate business need to know. So I think that our HRIS function is very secure and takes great pains to safeguard employee records.
Okay. Can you say some of those steps? What are some really important steps that have been taken?
Okay. I'm going to ask Chief Brinkley to come up.
Chief Brinkley, please make sure you address the Councilwoman's request in under 30 seconds. We have approximately 17 minutes left for you. We've got a number of other colleagues to get through, so let's make sure we're hitting answers to questions directly and succinctly, please.
Good morning. Some of the steps we've taken is we've definitely partnered with BCIT to make sure any new software that is acquired has been approved by them. We also have, for our HRIS system, segmented people out that wasn't previously segmented out. For those who have retired, have limited access. Those who have terminated have no access. And we also look at whether you're part-time or full-time and what access you can have with your personal data.
Okay, thank you. You're welcome. And then my last statement, and I guess I'm kind of piggybacking on the president, and every year when we have our budget, I guess I'm always bring up apprenticeship. And I'm at a point where I'm getting sick and tired of being sick and tired of just going over this over and over and over. We know that the mayor is trying to push job creation, getting our young people jobs, getting people that don't graduate from college or are not interested in college at a particular time in their life. And they need to be trained, and all this goes in hand with trying to address the crime issue here. And I go over this every year. It's like I feel like a broken record. I am requesting that your office takes the lead and requires every agency head to give a plan to start some type of apprenticeship, not an internship, an apprenticeship. It can start with one person. I'm sick of this. We're trying to create jobs here, and this government has an avenue and way to do that. This is not a joke. This is not a joke. So I request that a plan from I think we went over salaries. I think that our agency heads make good money, and they can take the charge to do this. Thank you.
I'm sick and tired of listening to her talk about it. She brings it up at every single hearing, every single session. Quran, poetry, you guys how many times did you hear Councilwoman Middleton bring this up yesterday? A dozen? Baker's dozen? We want something in writing. This is 29? 30? We want something in writing from you to this committee by no later than call of business this Friday, outlining your plan to address the Councilwoman's request. Good?
And also coming, I want her to collect, this is the HR department, to collect a plan from every single agency in this government, every agency.
We want that plan for how you're going to handle her request by call of business Friday, and then we will bring you back in front of the Budget and Appropriations Committee at some point this summer to discuss progress on that. Mr. President, are you good with that?
And I don't want apprenticeships that we have maybe 2 that have been holding on. I'm talking about new, innovative apprenticeships.
Are we good?
I'd like to respectfully say that I'd be happy to provide you with something in writing. However, I cannot demand or compel any agency to provide me with a written
I'm not
plan in
asking you to demand. I'm asking this to be taken to the mayor. The mayor is the leader of this city, and I'm suggesting that she makes this a requirement for every single agency head.
Madam Vice President, you can put in a bill and make that happen. We don't need to ask nobody. We put a bill in.
It's done.
Thank you. Labor Commissioner, can you please come up and state your name and your position?
Can I ask the HR person
Yeah.
one more question? Ms. Talley, when the last time, because see, I'm still on those salaries, because we have some of the lowest paid employees in our Public Works Department, our Transportation Department, and in General Service. And when I see all these big increases, I want to know why we can't just reclassify some of the lower people's job so they can make money, because then we talk about the budget, but the more they make, the more they pay in piggyback taxes. So we would get all that back. So when was the last time we had a comparison study of salaries of our lowest paid workers? Because it seems like everybody else can get all these raises, but the ones who are out there, and they'll say like, well, you know, these jobs are dangerous, being a police, working in the fire department, they'll say they're dangerous, but it's just as dangerous when a sanitation worker go to clean up an alley and drug dealers with guns tell them they better not clean it up. So their life is in jeopardy as well. So I think we need to do a comprehensive study and try to get these these raises up for our lowest employee. I know the union negotiates, but I'm talking about more than that union negotiation for their salary increase. I'm talking about reclassifying the people who really do the work in the city of Baltimore.
We have plans to study those positions within the next 6 months to 12 months.
Okay, all right.
Madam Labor Commissioner, can you please, the request that I had before about elected officials, you understand how all of this works, right?
Yes, I do.
Can you please state, and I didn't mean that in a demeaning way, I meant it because the answer I got before was insufficient. Can you state your name, your position, and can you just explain for the record how it works? Give me the history, explain the commission, when that was instituted. I want to know about the union raises that we do for the municipal employee unions and all of that. Can you please explain that?
Good morning. Deborah Moore Carter, Labor Commissioner for the City of Baltimore. I don't have exact dates, but I do have information. There was a commission that was started by a former Director of Human Resources to look at the salaries of elected officials. And the way it works, it's tied to the negotiations of the Memorandum of Understanding of our Baltimore City Union. So if any one union gets a raise of at least 2%, then elected officials that following January will get a raise of 2.5%. It's tied to ensuring that our city employees get a raise first, and then elected officials get a specified percentage raise.
And which unions do those include in that list?
It would include AFSCME Local 44, the City Union of Baltimore primarily.
Just those two?
Primarily, because they are the larger unions of the city.
What are the other unions included?
The other unions that we negotiate with include the firefighters, fire officers, Fraternal Order of Police Units 1 and 2. AFSCME includes 3 locals, Local 44, which is your labor and trades local, Local 558, community health nurses, Local 2202, which is human service workers, and the City Union of Baltimore, which is a citywide local as well as Local 44, covers primarily recreation people, inspectors, office support staff, et cetera. And then we have one professional organization, and that's the Managerial and Professional Society of Baltimore.
Okay, and where is the process that you just described? Can you explain where that's outlined?
It's in the law, but I'm not really sure where I can find it and give it to you.
Okay. And can you confirm that the city council is unable to vote to give itself a raise?
Yes, sir, I can.
Can you repeat that statement to me, please?
I confirm that the city council is unable to vote to give themselves a raise.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, yes, please.
And
Councilwoman in the mic.
And can you confirm that this raise cannot happen more frequently than, what, a year or 2?
It can happen more frequently than a year because raises for the unions are based on a fiscal year.
So it would, if it doesn't occur that often usually, but it cannot occur frequently. It has to be annual at the most, right?
I confirm that it has to be annually.
Thank you.
And there are some years where city employees did not get a raise.
Right.
I think in 2009, 2010, and 2011, so.
Because the unions didn't.
Yes, ma'am, the unions did not get a raise.
Correct. Thank you.
Can I,
Council
dovetail on
President.
that? So explain to me, if CoB gets a 2-year raise, they get 2%, and then they get 2%, does that trigger?
Yes, on a fiscal year basis, so CoB would receive a 2% for one fiscal year and then 2% for the next fiscal year. So it's triggered for each fiscal year.
Okay.
But they both have to do.
In the mic, Councilwoman.
But those 2 largest unions have to both have an increase, right?
I believe it's just one, but I'll verify that.
Okay.
I was told it's one. It's just one union that has to
It
get
is
a raise.
one?
Yes, ma'am.
So, okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Councilman Clark, Councilman Schleifer. Oh, and I wanted to introduce Councilman John Bullock from the 9th District and Councilman Bill Henry from the 4th, member of the committee. Councilman Schleifer.
This is for Mary. Emma. Good morning.
Good morning.
My questions are around the Work Baltimore Conference, and so I just wanted to get some metrics on the successes. I went out there. It was a very nice event. I'm just curious, 2 things. 1, how much did it cost in total? And number 2, how many people are now gainfully employed because of that conference?
I cannot answer the latter. I don't know how many people are employed. However, I know that I believe 10% of those people that received interviews were hired. That is the data that we collected.
So how many interviews were there?
I'm sorry?
How many interviews were there?
I can't verify that. I can't confirm that number. I simply don't know what it is. The cost of Work Baltimore was in excess of $400,000.
Okay. And so how do we know that 10% of those interviewed got jobs unless we know how many people got jobs and how many people were interviewed?
Well, we know that through exit polling, as well as post surveys that we sent out to every single participant. And we didn't get a high rate of return on those responses. So the ones that we did get, some people verified that they actually received employment as a result of Work Baltimore.
So do we know how many people responded to that survey saying that they got employment?
Yes, I do have that number. Do you have the book?
That's crazy.
We provided an annual report, and I believe that we disseminated it to the council members as well, that contains that information specifically.
We received.
I'd be happy to provide it to you again, if you'd like.
Yeah,
But it's
just curious how many people got.
In Focus.
I didn't see.
Provides a breakdown
Okay.
of the events and how many people completed the surveys.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, for the 90-day post-event survey, looking at employers, they said that they interviewed, I believe it was 700 job seekers.
So 70 people got jobs?
They interviewed 700 job seekers. However, at the convention, they interviewed 276. And of that number, 79 of them accepted employment, 66 declined employment.
So, okay, 79 got employment?
79 accepted positions, 66 declined positions.
60. Okay. So what is the going rate in the market for somebody to find employment?
What is the going rate?
So there's a lot of different options people have when looking for employment, whether it's going through headhunters, whether it's going through other groups or going through other agencies or whatever it may be. And so normally there's a cost associated with finding somebody employment. So you take what is the cost of your efforts, how many people get employed, and that's how much it costs to employ each person. And so I'm just curious what the market standard is so we know the metrics on if that's successful or not. Because based on the amount of people that got employment, which means there was jobs that met their needs, that were good jobs for them, is over $5,000 per person. Now, I don't know if that's good or if that's bad, so I'm just curious if you guys have any metrics on whether or not that is a good rate of what it would cost to get somebody gainfully employed.
I will have to research that and let you know.
Okay.
Councilman, can you repeat that request?
So my question is, what is the market standard rate that it costs to find somebody a position? So all groups, companies, agencies that find people jobs should know how much it costs them to find somebody a position on average. And so I'm just curious what that average is.
Just to summarize, what's let's call it the standard rate for this region to find someone employment?
Yeah, like in the business world, it's like, what's your cost to acquire a
The cost
customer?
per hire.
So cost per hire, yeah.
Council President?
I just wanted to ask about the civilian jobs in the police department, which are really CoB position. Why can't we make the police department put civilians in those positions? Post them and put civilians in them. Because we had a bunch of them that came before the Board of Estimates, and I voted no on every last one of them. But we need to stop the police department from taking union positions and putting officers in there, retired officers. And most of them don't live in the city of Baltimore.
Are these the contract positions you're talking about specifically?
Yes, they are CoB position. Maybe the Labor Commissioner can speak to that, because they are union positions.
Good morning. So the City Union of Baltimore recently protested a number of contractual positions because when they looked at them, they felt and determined that a lot of the retired police officers were doing bargaining unit work. And the CoB contract requires that temporary employees in bargaining unit positions can be in those positions no more than 6 months. So in order to address the protest, I met with the city union, president of the City Union of Baltimore, her staff, as well as the interim commissioner, Tuggle, and we agreed that one thing that will happen is that, well, right now what's going on is that there's a staffing study, And the staffing study will not just include sworn positions, but they'll include civilian positions. And the police department determined that in the future they would have labor management meetings with CoB to look at some of the vacant positions in the police department and fill those positions with civilians.
But they know, because they've been doing this for years with these positions being, contractual for 6 months. They've been doing it for years,
Yes,
and
sir.
it has to stop.
Yes, sir, we agree with
It
you.
really has to stop.
Yes, sir.
Councilwoman?
No, if I might, I just wanted to say that when you're meeting with police representatives,
Yes, ma'am.
don't forget that the retirees don't have any. Or they have a benevolent retiree group, but that it's also important to include representatives of the retirees who we're talking about as potentially going into those positions. I haven't heard of this before. I've heard civilians into police positions, but the idea of retirees is a different one to me. But since it's been raised, make sure, just know that the active unions do not represent
Retirees.
Retirees don't generally have their own bargaining units, but they can organize themselves to be represented, like at meetings, just so they know what's going on, and they should be.
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to add two things, and one was to address a concern of Councilwoman Middleton and one for the president. We have been meeting with city agencies regarding the apprenticeship program. We met with the Director of Recreation and Parks to talk about some of the tree trimming positions that could possibly be apprenticed again because they're not. And we also met with the Director of Transportation regarding cement finishers, masons, and other types, those electrical positions that do the street lighting. So the way we've been doing it, working with Mr. Alexander, we've been going agency by agency and looking at positions that are apprenticeable. And also on Friday with the City Union of Baltimore, we took a tour of the Back River Wastewater Treatment Plant and the Water Treatment Plant, because that's a part of CoB understanding classifications. And yesterday, we had a meeting with Local 44 regarding their classifications, and with the help of members of the Department of Human Resources, we even interviewed employees and let them talk about their classes.
Okay, we're gonna wrap up. Ms. Talley, Councilman Henry has a question about whether or not the city can mandate employees of the city having a bank account because of some promotional email that you just sent out.
Yeah, there's an e-blast in our inboxes right now for Align cards as a payroll payment option that we're letting people take their entire paycheck and essentially put it onto a reloadable debit card,
Right.
which is not what I would think would be, from a financial literacy perspective, a helpful thing, especially for our employees who are at the lower end of the income spectrum. Is there anything that prevents us from simply requiring that payroll be directly deposited into a bank account? I mean, we have a.
We got it.
Yeah.
Yes or no?
I don't know.
Okay,
I will find
please
out.
stay after and talk with Councilman Henry outside.
Okay.
Councilwoman Clark. Councilwoman Clark has some more questions for the labor.
I just have a statement, and the director already knows what it is, so I can make it brief.
Please.
Ms. Talley, you, as the head of HR and the finance director, are the two people who developed the recommendations to the mayor for what our prescription benefit program will be as of 2020. We thank you both and the mayor that the administration's decision to not have a city-sponsored prescription program has been soundly rejected, and that it will be city-sponsored but that I want to make sure that you hear what I said to the finance director as well, which is this. We made money when we rebid the current contract. We're heading toward renegotiations. One, we want some of that money to be quantified as it goes forward and to benefit the retirees on the program. Secondly, we want also retirees, just like our last conversation, represented in discussions before any final decisions are made about the 2020 program. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Ms. Talley, please also stick around. Council President Young has additional questions for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All, thank you for coming. Let's move. I'd like to acknowledge Councilman Cohen from the 1st District who joined us. Let's move on to the next panel. Folks out in the hallway, I think that's you. We are starting with green infrastructure. Folks, come on. We're starting with Rec and Parks, Planning, and DOT green infrastructure. It's a half-hour panel. We're starting at 12:30. Why is it calendar? Okay. I didn't see the email. I specifically talked.